The Pack fumbled the game. Burrow got hurt, which is a shame. Taysom played QB. The Lions had no TDs or threes. And Carson Wentz is kinda lame. Welcome to the Mish Po. Alrighty, welcome to the Week 12 edition of the Mish Po. I didn't have food poisoning this week, so that is an improvement over last week. But I am kind of warm right now. I finished work and Bree's like, all right, now we've got to do some packing for when we move. And she had a list of like 4 things, and it was warm, and I was wearing pants, and it took like an hour, and it was a whole thing. So I'm currently shirtless, trying to cool off. Got an open window here in our bedroom, which is where I'm recording this episode. So yeah, another thing that'll definitely, hopefully, cool me off is this nice beer here. So we're gonna give it a crack and drink it. And I know you guys can't see this, but I'm just gonna flip it just for the Hexis. So we'll call Lincoln. It didn't land. You guys could probably tell by the well, I could hear it, but you guys probably couldn't. But yeah. So I guess we're kind of dwindling down here on the business aspect of this league. So I mean, we're still, we're a couple weeks away from the playoffs. There's, I believe, only one team that is definitely locked in, which is Bruce. But I believe every other team, well, maybe not every other team. I don't think Michael could make it. I think technically I still have a chance. All the teams that are 4 and 7 technically still have a chance to make it. But not a guarantee, obviously. And you'd pretty much have to win out and hope a lot of other things happen and have a good enough point differential or whatever. So otherwise, the only other piece of business that I have is I just, on a whim, created a fantasy basketball league, which 10 of us have been joined into. It is called the Stinky Gang. Did fantasy basketball once with Bailey, Zach, and Adam like 3 years ago. And I was like the only one that was like paying somewhat attention to it, and I was only paying partial attention to it, and I think I did really well. But like I said, that was like 3 years ago, and it didn't mean anything. It was for any 4-team league for anything is just ridiculous. I'm pretty sure the 4 of us had a 4-team fantasy football league the year prior to this league starting up, and I think that was just ridiculous, probably. But yeah, that's really the only business we got here. And then obviously there were no trades because we passed the trade deadline. So on that front, that's pretty much all we got. Before we get into the game recaps, I'm just gonna take a quick sip of my Brewski. Alrighty, first matchup. We've got me versus Derek. This one seemed pretty close right out the gate. Cam Newton definitely helped out, getting 19.2. Kenyon Drake got 16. Mike Davis got 15.9, so pretty solid performances from those guys. Devontae Parker, 18.1. But then on my side of the ball, we had Chase Claypool get 15.9, 23.1 from Deontay Johnson. Jonathan Taylor decided to show up. He got 15.4, way better than what he's been averaging lately. And then Robert Woods showed up in a big way, scoring 30.6. So this one was basically over by Sunday. What was the Monday night game? Oh, that was Rams, Patriots, or Bucks. I believe. I don't remember. I think that was Monday because Sunday was Raiders Chiefs. That was a good game. They're both pretty good games. I like seeing Brady get upset in the Bucks game, Rams game. Anyway, final score for this one, I beat Derek 119.02 to 95.1. which brings us on to the next matchup, Michael versus Lincoln. This one was very, very close, and it came down to the final minutes of the Monday night game. Bucks, Rams, man. Because you had Cooper Kupp on Michael's team and Gerald Everett on the other side. If Cooper Kupp catches a couple more balls, Michael's got the win. But that did not happen because Tom Brady threw a pick, which, is exactly what they paid him to do, be an exact replica of Jameis. So, final score of this one, 118.22 to 116.46, which brings us on to Caleb versus T-Corn. This one was not close at all. Had some really solid performances on T-Corn's side. 27.74 from Justin Herbert, 14.9 from Chase Edmonds. Keenan Allen just been going crazy, 33.5 points from him. TJ Hawkinson got in the action, got 10.8. Even Michael Thomas, 19.4, and then Rodrigo Blankenship broke the Packers' hearts. But hey, we should have played better throughout the game. Didn't even have to get to overtime there, but that's a whole separate conversation. He got 14 points. Football team's defense got 13. You did have some solid performances, though, on the other side. The Saints defense got 16. Justin Tucker had 10. Larry Fitz put up 14.2. Pretty good for him on the year. Chris Godwin had 18.3. Dalvin had 24. And Roethlisberger did a pretty decent 17.68. But that was no match for T-Corn, as T-Corn came away with the win, 156.04 to 115.68. Next matchup, we've got Fiala versus State Farm, a battle of two pretty solid teams. Lamar Jackson has not been playing great. He only put up 17.54. Todd Gurley only put up 3.9, but Devontae continued to do well, 23.6 for him. Tyler Boyd had 17.5, and that's pretty much all she wrote for State Farm's side of the game here. Kyler Murray put up, for him, not that great, 20.26, but, Kyler's just been doing great this year. On the season, he's the number one overall player, not only for quarterbacks, but for all players. So he's been playing great. Josh Jacobs had a modest 13.4. CeeDee Lamb, hell of a catch from him. I don't know if you guys saw that catch from him. That game had a couple of great catches. Adam Thielen also came away with that really great one-handed catch in the corner of the end zone. But CD got 16.6, and the Steelers defense got 18 points. Pretty stout performance from them. They've been doing well. I know I've heard some people are kind of discounting the Steelers. They're obviously they're undefeated, but they're saying they're not that great of a team. But they're undefeated. Their defense is great. They've got a really nice offense. 3 receivers that could do great any given week, and I happen to have stock in 2 of them. But yeah, those Steelers are definitely a team to watch out for going forward. Definitely, I'd say they're leading the. Actually, I believe they're one of the favorites for the Super Bowl. But I saw this article yesterday or today or something where it was like ranking the top 10 teams in terms of like what the odds to win the Super Bowl, and despite the Steelers being 9-0, or what is it, 10-0, 9-0. Yeah, I believe it's 10-0. The Steelers are 10-0. They're still not the favorite team to win the Super Bowl. And if you had to guess the other team, you'd probably be right. The number 1 team is the Chiefs. Obviously you can't really discount Patrick Mahomes, but they've lost a couple games this season. The Steelers, on the other hand, obviously no losses, so I'm sure those 2 teams will see each other. I don't know if they are scheduled to play each other at all this season, but yeah, if they do, it'll be a great game, I think. But they could also definitely play each other potentially in the playoffs. Looking at the schedule, they do not play each other this season in the regular season, but obviously, like I said, definitely could see each other in the playoffs. So anyways, let's get back to it here. Final score for this one, Fiala won 108.46 to 92.14, which brings us on to Bruce versus Macy. This one's also decently low scoring, pretty low scoring, I think. Week in general, it seems to be going that way lately. But yeah, Bruce versus Macy, we had some pretty solid performances here. Kalen Balaj put up 14.1. Mark Andrews had 20.6. He's been doing pretty solid. Only pass catcher on the Ravens that consistently does well, and he's not even. I mean, he's had a couple down weeks throughout the season, but he's definitely one of the better options for the Ravens passing attack. On the other side, Tyler Lockett had 21.7. Tyreek Hill 27 flat. He's been great this season. I believe he's the number one wide receiver, standard number 2 PPR. So he's been playing pretty well, quietly I might add, because no one really talks about him. And then Derek Carr has been playing really well lately. He put up 22.6. Final score for this one, Bruce got the win, 119.2 to 83.48, which brings us on to Colin versus Brian. I'd say this is the highest scoring matchup of the week. You got the, spoiler alert, highest scoring team, and it looks like the third highest scoring team as well. So definitely a high caliber matchup here. Brian versus Colin. Pretty obviously with numbers those high. That's how you got some solid performances. Deshaun Watson put up 31.36. Zeke put up 19.4. Finally decided to show up. James Conner put up a modest 12.9. Oh man, every team or every player almost on this side of the ball is doing well. AJ Brown 16.2. Travis Kelce has just been playing phenomenal. 26.86. Almost like a cheat code at this point. AB Antonio Brown got 13.82. So he's doing all right. But then there's Matt Prater got -1. Missed his only field goal and only kick attempt of the game, except for kickoff. So he's been the Lions this week did not do well. So on the other side, however, we got 22 points from the Browns defense. Justin Jefferson got 17.6. Darren Waller 21.8. DJ Moore 21.8. Will Fuller 14. Clyde got 20.7. Nicholas Chubb 11.4, and then Mr. Rogers 21.74. Brian came away with the victory in this matchup, 161.04 to 129.12, giving Brian the highest point total on the week and earning himself a beer. That will bring us on to the last matchup of the week. This one very well could be the lowest scoring matchup of the week. Looking at the numbers here, doing quick mental math, I would go on a limb and say this was the lowest scoring matchup of the week. So performances were not super great. It had a couple good ones though. Derrick Henry continued to do Derrick Henry things, 20.2, and then Robbie Anderson had 11.6, so not terrible for him. 16.3 from Corey Davis, and that's about where it ends in terms of solid production from Sam's side of the ball. On Adams, 14.1 from AJ Green. He scored his first touchdown of the season, so not bad. Speaking of scoring touchdowns, Mike Evans, 15.9. I don't know if you guys watched that game, but that touchdown that he had was crazy. He fought for every inch of that touchdown. Carlos Hyde, 17.5. Aaron Jones, 17.1, and Russ cooked up 18.8 or 18.08 points. Not his greatest performance, obviously, but that game, it was a bit underwhelming, I think. I was expecting more, but decent. Final score of this matchup, Adam got the win, 101.48 to 84.54. So that'll do it for this week's matchup recap. Alrighty. Moving on to this week's power rankings. At number 14, we've got Michael. He put up a good amount of points this week, and you came literally a catch for 10 yards away from getting the victory in this one. But you, I think, solely have the worst record of anyone this season. I believe you're, 2-9, something like that. So, obviously not too great. But you got a tough opponent coming up this week, so we'll see how it goes. So yeah, Michael at 14. Number 13, we've got Derek. I'm finally out of that 13 spot, which is pretty nice. Derek lost to me, but he didn't do terrible in terms of points. Derek did. Would have beat a few teams. Actually, looking here, he would have beat 3 teams. So, I mean, not the worst, obviously, but obviously you want more points scored. Goes up against an opponent that he very well could beat, but also could lose to. So we'll see how that matchup goes. Which brings us on to number 12, Sam. I believe you scored the second least amount of points, so not great. You did complain about Ronald Jones being bad. I don't remember exactly what you said, but you were pretty angry at his performance. But you go up against an opponent that you lost to Adam, and Adam did pretty well. So I mean, it wasn't all that close, but obviously you're looking for more points. And you're going up against an opponent this upcoming week that you very well could beat, but you could also lose to. So it'll be interesting. So that's Sam at number 12. Number 11, you've got Caleb. You got Sabadunked by T-Corn. You didn't do terrible. You put up a decent amount of points, about middle of the road, I'd say, for this week. And your opponent this upcoming week is, I don't know, probably right around your definitely around your same record. But we'll see if that goes for you next week. So that's Caleb at 11. And then we've got myself at number 10. I was able to pull off the win against Derek, and that puts me on my 4th win of the season. I think, yeah, 4th win, and my first win streak, so that's pretty cool. This upcoming week, I have an opponent that, much like the matchups for Sam and Derek, is a matchup that could go either way for me, but I'm hoping for the best. So that's number 10 with me. Number 9, we've got Macy. You put up the least amount of points this past week, and you went up against an opponent that, in Bruce, that he did pretty decent for himself, so you would have had to put up a lot more to beat him, but yeah, it's not the best feeling when you score the least amount of points. This upcoming week, you go up against an opponent that is playing well lately. So we'll see if you can turn things around for yourself in this upcoming matchup. Which brings us to number 8, Adam. You beat Sam, and you did score a decent amount of points. Obviously not the most, probably lower middle, but a win's a win, This upcoming matchup is pretty tough. I would say. This team is on the up and up that you're playing against, so we'll see how you can fare in this upcoming matchup. Bring us on to number 7. We've got Colin. You did put up a really nice number of points. As I mentioned earlier, you put up the 3rd most, but you faced Brian, who put up the most. So, I mean, not much you can do about that. Some guys just have really good weeks, and sometimes they're all on the same team. So, this upcoming matchup is not much easier. In fact, I'd argue it's maybe more difficult. So you're going to need every point you're going to get this upcoming matchup. Which brings us on to number 6, Lincoln. You beat Michael, and it was very close. I'm sure you were sweating from places. But yeah, a win's a win for you. You are going up against an opponent that is better than the one you just faced, but definitely a matchup you could still win, though. So we'll see how you can do in this upcoming week. Which brings us on to number 5. Alex Fiala got the upset win, as predicted by myself last week, against State Farm. You put up a modest amount of points, like middle-ish, lower middle pack of the scores this week. But as I've mentioned before, and something that's true in all of fantasy, a win is a win. So this upcoming week, you play an opponent that I feel like you definitely could do a good job of winning. You just so long as all your players perform. So that's number 5 with Fiala. Bringing us to number 4, we've got Mr. Brian Ristow, scored the most points. You beat Colin, who also scored a lot of points. So that's pretty good feeling, I'd say, to be in that situation. But this upcoming week doesn't get too much easier for you. You've got a decent opponent. I'd say more than decent. A team that definitely can score a lot of points any given week. In fact, this is the team that was right behind you in terms of total points scored this past week. So definitely have yourself a tough matchup. So we'll see if you can keep things rolling. Bringing us on to number 3, T-Corn. You beat Caleb and did so in a pretty convincing fashion. Caleb did put up a decent amount of points, but you will put up a lot. Man, that stack with Herbert and Keenan definitely working for you. So we'll see if those guys can keep things rolling, as you do face a pretty tough opponent this upcoming week. So we'll see how you can perform. Bringing us to number 2, we've got State Farm. You suffered a tough loss to Fiala. Your team underperformed quite a bit, I would assume, in your perspective. And you do have a chance to bounce back, though, this week. The team you're facing is they put up a solid amount of points last week. So we'll see if you can put up a solider amount of points this week as you play another week of fantasy football. Which brings us to number 1. We've got Bruce. I'm pretty sure, like I said before, the only team that's locked into the playoffs with a couple weeks left until they start. You beat Macy pretty handedly this past week. But your opponent this upcoming week is a bit better, I'd say. They are coming off a win. And they scored, less than you did this past week, but, not a terrible amount. So we'll see if your team can come and perform this upcoming week in your Week 12 matchup. So that is Bruce to round out the power rankings. Yeah. Alrighty. That'll move us on to this week's matchup previews. First matchup, we've got me versus Caleb. Both teams are sitting at 4-7. One of them is, however, coming off of a loss, and one of them is coming off of a win. Actually, 2 wins for myself. Key players for myself, we've got Jonathan Taylor, who actually played really well. If you watch the game, he looked good this past week. Obviously not the greatest, as it was against my Packers, but, whatever. He goes up against Tennessee this week, and so we'll see if he can keep performing as he did last week and carry me to another victory. So that is Jonathan Taylor. It's one of my key players. My second key player is Robert Woods, who showed up in a big way this past week, scoring a season high 30.6 points on the week. But the opponent is a pretty tough one. San Francisco's defense, while depleted, still pretty good. So we'll see how Mr. Woods can perform this upcoming week. Which brings us on to Caleb's key players. First up, we've got Mr. Duke Johnson. I believe David, his brother, is out this week. Not really brothers, but he is going up against Detroit, which, is not a good football team, as much as you, Caleb, a Lions fan, would like to think. But plays on Thursday this week on Thanksgiving, so maybe he'll be giving you some points. And your second key players, which is something I did last week, which also applies to you this week. However, just looking at your lineup right now, I realize you've made a change, so I'm kind of doing a pivot here. It's sort of the same. I was going to say the Cardinals wide receivers that you have on your team, which are Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald, but you currently don't have Larry Fitzgerald in your starting lineup, so we'll just go with Christian Kirk, who I mentioned him a couple weeks ago where he scored above 20 points for 3 consecutive outings. However, the last 2 weeks he's only scored 6.7 and 9 points, respectively. And he's going up against the Patriots defense this week, who is a pretty good defense. Probably, I'd say, better than Seattle and Buffalo, his last 2 opponents. Maybe not Buffalo, but definitely Seattle in terms of, points given up to wide receivers. So we'll see how well he can do. So those are my key players for this matchup, and I have myself as the winner. I'm riding the hot hand here, as the Colts would do, and I'm picking myself again. So next matchup, we've got Michael versus Fiala. This matchup is, it's pretty interesting. Key players for Michael, we've got Jerry Jeudy. Had been putting up a couple good weeks lately, but last week kind of fell short. Got only 6.7, but that Miami Dolphins defense is actually pretty good this season. Doesn't get much easier for him, though, because he goes up against the New Orleans Saints, who I believe is, in terms of actually NFL play, they are one of the best, if not the best, defense in the league. So it'll be a bit of a tougher matchup for him. And then your second key player is Curtis Samuel, who I believe is getting Teddy back this week, but didn't seem to matter last week with PJ Walker as he put up 21.4. And he's playing up against Minnesota this week, whose pass defense is not that great. So we'll see how well Curtis can do in this week for you. Which brings us to Fiala's key players. We've got Mr. Wayne Gallman, who has been quietly performing quite well lately. His last 4 outings, him scoring above 10, and 2 of them scoring above 15. So, goes up against Cincinnati, where he's very poised, I think, to score a lot of points. Cincinnati's defense is not the greatest, and they just lost Joe Burrow, so there goes a major offensive weapon for them. They're going to be resorting to, I believe, not Ryan Lindley. Who is it? Maybe it is. I can't remember. But what's his face? Brian Allen or something like that. Brandon Allen, whatever his name is. But if you can't remember the quarterback's name, he's probably not going to do very well. And the Giants' defense isn't terrible. So Wayne Gallman's looking to get a lot of work. Which brings us on to your second key player, Mr. Crazy Catch, CeeDee Lamb. He's also playing on Thursday. Last week, 16.6. The week before, 14.1. So he's been doing pretty well lately. And he's getting Andy Dalton back. He had him, I believe, last week too, but I don't really keep too close attention. I think, no, he did have Dalton. And it's going against Washington, who is a pretty... not their record is not good, but their defense is quite good. So, we'll see how well Mr. Baba Black Sheep can do against them. So, the winner for this matchup I have is Fiala. Next matchup, poised to be very high scoring, I think. T-Corn versus Brian. Key players for T-Corn, we've got Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry. Last week he did pretty good, putting up 13.4 points against Cincinnati. And actually, since week 6, he's been playing very well. His lowest score is actually this past week, where he scored 13.4, but he's playing really well. Number 9 wide receiver in PPR, so that's pretty solid. He's a bit questionable right now for Thursday's game with an ankle injury. But it seems like he will play against Dallas, whose defense is not all that great. So we'll see how well Terry can do against them. Which brings us to my second key player for you. We've got Mr. Michael Thomas, who finally played well last week, putting up 19.4. Will Taysom Hill continue to get him involved? We'll find out on Sunday when he plays Dallas or Denver. So we'll see how well Mr. Mike can do against them. Which brings us to the key players for Brian. First up is Mr. Aaron Rodgers. He's been playing really well lately. Last week, he put up 21.74, which is his lowest score over the last 3 weeks, but still pretty decent. Goes up against the Chicago Bears defense on, I believe, Sunday night. So that'll be exciting. Their defense, despite the team being pretty bad, their offense, obviously is pretty terrible, but the defense is quite good. So we'll see how well Mr. Rogers can do in that neighborhood, which brings us on to our second key player for you, the rookie Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Last couple weeks, he's done pretty well. 12. He's been almost, getting better by a multitude of 6 points each week, getting 6.1 week 8, 12.4 in week 9, and then after the bye, week 11, he scored 20.7. So he's been doing quite well lately. He goes against the Tampa Bay defense, who held the Rams' run game to limited points. I believe they were on the ground. They scored or rushed maybe 50 yards or so. But we'll see how well Clyde can do against them. So, for this matchup, I have my winner as T-Corn, which brings us on to State Farm versus Colin. Key players for this matchup, starting off with State Farm, Lamar Jackson, who is now playing on Sunday, was scheduled for Thursday, but some COVID got in the way, and now they're postponing the game. He's going up against the division rival, undefeated Pittsburgh Steelers. Lamar Jackson has not been doing that great this season compared to how he was doing last year. He is the number 10 overall in the NFL, number 9 quarterback. But I just have a haunting suspicion that he's not going to perform very well against the Pittsburgh Steelers. He is projected to get 23.52. If I had to make a bet, I would say he'd score less than that. So that is my first key player for State Farm's team, which brings us on to another player that's been struggling, Todd Gurley. Last week, 3.9 points only against the New Orleans Saints defense, but their defense is pretty good. And Todd Gurley is also injured. He has some knee injury. He is currently questionable. He did not practice Wednesday. And he goes up against the Las Vegas Raiders, whose offense is pretty good, but their defense is less than stellar, I would say. So we'll see how well, if he plays, Todd Gurley can do. Which brings us on to Colin's key players, another running back, Ezekiel Elliott, who last 3 games has not been doing well. However, he put up 19.4 points against the Minnesota defense, who, you usually believe is pretty solid against the run. But he is going up against the Washington football team this Thanksgiving. So we'll see if Zeke can eat again. Which brings us on to another key player, was also supposed to play on Thursday, but like I said about Lamar Jackson, James Conner of the Pittsburgh Steelers is now playing on Sunday. Last week did decent, 12.9, but the couple weeks prior to that barely cracked 10 points total. So we'll see how well James can do against the Baltimore Ravens, whose defense is also pretty good. So those are the key players for this matchup, and I have my winner being Colin, and I have that being an upset pick. So next matchup, we've got Bruce versus Adam. Key players here for Bruce, we've got Mr. Miles Sanders, who's just on that kind of a stinker Philadelphia Eagles team. Last week, he only put up 8.1 against Cleveland, who does have a pretty solid defense. Actually, they're all right. Their best player is Myles Garrett. But, you're kind of expecting more out of Miles Sanders. This week he's got Seattle, whose defense is, as I've mentioned before, not that great. So we'll see if he can do better than he did last week. Which brings us on to your second key player, which is J.D. Smooch's Hexis, playing Thursday against Dallas Cowboys on Thanksgiving. Last week he got 8.9, but the 2 weeks prior he scored at 17.2 and 17.9 respectively. As I said, going up against Dallas, whose defense is not that great, but they looked good kind of last week. So we'll see how well Smooches can do against them. Which brings us on to key players for Adam. First up, we've got Zachary Moss. Been very inconsistent this season, to say the least. He scored 2.7 points last week against Arizona, or 2 weeks ago against Arizona. Has come back from a bye, goes up against the Chargers. Their defense is not that great, so we'll see how well Zachary can do against them. Which brings us to our second key player for Adam, AJ Green. The old vet still got it, maybe. 14.1 points last week, scoring a touchdown. Goes up against the Giants this week. Their defense is middle of the road, I'd say. But he doesn't have his Mr. Joe Burrow mobile quarterback rookie sensation. So we'll see how well that Bengals offense can operate without their young stud. For this matchup, I've got my winner being Bruce. Probably no surprise there. Which brings us to our next matchup, Macy versus Lincoln. First key player for Macy, we've got Matt Ryan, who last week did not do great against the Saints, but like I said, that's kind of expected because of the Saints defense being pretty good. Scored 7.28, so not that great. And this upcoming week he got Las Vegas. Their defense is obviously worse because the Saints is pretty much the best. So we'll see how well Matt Ryan can do. We'll see if he's got Julio to throw to this week. Another player you have, and based off of what you've got in your lineup, you do have Julio. He is questionable, so we'll see how well he can play. Which brings us to our second key player for Macy, Kalen Ballage. He's been doing pretty well the last 3 weeks, getting 16.4, 15.2, and 14.1 his last 3 weeks. One of them was against Miami, whose defense is good. And this week he's got Buffalo, who's also kind of a middle-of-the-pack defense. We'll see how well Kalen can do. But Eckler could be coming back soon, and I believe, Macy, you have him as well. Yeah, you've got him currently on your IR. I don't know if Eckler will play this week, but should he play, you'll definitely have the starting running back for the Chargers. Which brings us on to Lincoln's key players. This is kind of an interesting one. Usually if I do the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receivers or the Arizona Cardinals wide receivers, it's when I do 2 players from the same team, same position, it's usually wide receivers. But in this case, Lincoln is starting 2 New Orleans Saints running backs, Alvin Kamara and Latavius Murray. Both of them are going up against Denver, and obviously Alvin Kamara is Alvin Kamara. Last week he did pretty not up to par for him, only scoring 10.5 points, and Latavius Murray actually did quite good, scoring 10.5 points. So it's kind of funny. They scored the amount of points, and it's a different perspective for both of them. We'll see how well those guys can do. With Taysom Hill, Latavius seems to be getting more involved in the offense. So we'll see how well those guys can do. Bringing on to our second key player, we've got Mr. DJ Chark last week, scoring 8.1 points against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, going up against another tough AFC North team, the Cleveland Browns, this week. And I believe they're going on to another quarterback. Jake Luton is out, and some other guy, I can't remember who, is in. I guess we could look. Mike Glennon is going to be playing for them this week, chucking the rock. So we'll see how well DJ can do with Mr. Mike here. For this matchup, I've got my winner being Lincoln, and that is my lock pick for the week. Bringing us on to the last matchup of the week. Sam versus Derek. Key players. We'll start with Derek. First up, we've got Michael Davis. Could be potentially the last start for him. Christian McCaffrey, I think, is coming back this week. Maybe. We'll see. Last week, he did do pretty well, 15.9. So after a couple down weeks, he did do better. Going up against the Minnesota Vikings defense, who let up a lot of points, I believe, to whoever they played last week. I can't remember. The Vikings played the Cowboys. So Zeke, he put up, 20 points almost? So we'll see how well Mike can do against them. Barring how well McCaffrey does. And that'll bring us on to second key player for Derek. We've got Mr. Travis Fulgham. Middle of the season, he was on fire, but the last 2 weeks, he's only scored 1.8 points in each of the last 2 weeks. But he's going up against Seattle's defense this week, who, like I said before, likes to give up points. However, he will be having Carson Wentz throwing the ball, and he's not that great. So we'll see how well Travis can do, this week. Which brings us on to key players for Sam. First up, we've got Thomas Brady, who looked pretty bad last week against the Rams. This week, not much easier in terms of teams. Got the Chiefs, but their defense, I would say, is a bit worse than the Rams. So we'll see if Brady can bounce back. And then we've got a second key player for Sam. We've got Mr. T. Higgins. Last couple weeks has been doing pretty decent, scoring 11.63 and a 13.84. Or sorry, those are his projected. He scored 21.5, but then last week he got 5.6. And now he's down Joe Burrow, who is pretty good at throwing the rock. So we'll see how well T. Higgins can do as they go up against the Giants this upcoming week. Not the worst defense, but also not the best defense. Despite all that, I have got this week's winner as Sam. So that'll do it with the power rankings. I kind of have to pee quite bad, so I'm going to make this ending short. Thank you guys all for listening. I am assuming everybody listens, but, I know for sure there's people that don't. But that's okay. I don't do this, I do it for me mostly. I guess I do it for you guys as well, but, it's fun, talking and such. My mouth does get a bit dry, which leads me to drink more liquids, which leads me to have to pee really bad right now. So I'm going to go do that. So with that, thank you and thank you.